Hey guys, Anthony here. This is another point of view, and I want to talk about anxiety today. Anxiety is probably one of the biggest things that we need to talk about more. I think the problem that we have in society today is that we don't talk enough about our feelings or our emotions or our reactions, rather, to events that happen in our life. What happens then is we suffer in silence rather than figuring out how to deal with it. We don't do the same with other things. The reason that we gain so much knowledge in different sectors of life, such as science, etc., is because we share the information and you can research papers and build more information. But we're in the stone age with mental health because we don't talk about it and nobody shares how they feel for fear, ironically, of perhaps being judged or looked down on or not feeling strong in themselves, perhaps a lot of insecurity. And for me, I came from a situation where I was agoraphobic with my anxiety. It led me to be an anorexic weight. I was admitted to a psychiatric ward when I was 19 because my anxiety led me to be unable to eat. It just completely ruined my appetite. I've met other people who went the opposite end of that spectrum and their anxiety fueled them to eat, which caused other issues. So there is clearly a problem here. Why didn't I have the tools to deal with my anxiety when it came along, the same as other people? Well, because nobody gave me the training. And that's really fundamentally, I think, what is wrong with our upbringing into this society, is that nobody talks about it. We're not taught about it in school. We're not taught about it by most of our parents. I won't discredit any parents, but I just feel that a lot of them didn't have the training either for them to pass on to us, and that's not their fault or their parents' fault. It all begins with teaching one generation to get it right. And I think we're at an age now where information is just so accessible that we're finally in that transition where people can go to the internet and view a video like mine to get different sets of opinions to build their own, to build a tool set in their mind that helps them. If there was only one answer, there would only ever be one self-help book. But that's not the case. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, thousands, because there's so many separate opinions. And people need different opinions because not everybody's path is the same. We're all quite unique. And it gives you so much of an advantage to open up to various amounts of people. I advocate therapy to a degree, but the point that I try to make with how therapy goes wrong or can go wrong is that you're only talking to one person. And I really feel that we gain a lot more value and knowledge from talking to lots of people. Now, it may not be talking to people. It may just be watching a lot of different people's videos to get the information. However you do it, I think it's all a form of therapy. But I always encourage people to open up about how they feel. So I have to get that out there. So let me tell you a little bit about my story and basically how I came to be where I am now. So I ended up agoraphobic. I was completely riddled with anxiety to the point where I was even obsessive about where I slept that night. I got uncomfortable in my own bedroom, so I used to go sleep in my mother's conservatory. For some reason, I just felt cozier on the sofa. The sofa used to belong to my great-grandmother. I think I found a bit of comfort there. And I was able to sleep there. Got to the point where I was so weak from not eating that, of course, I kept going to the doctors and asking them to help. They advised me to take anti-anxiety medication, but it didn't feel right to me. I felt that putting more chemicals in me wasn't a good move. So I eventually was fortunate, I'd say now, to be admitted into a psychiatric ward where I spent 2 months. And I had a complete nervous breakdown in there. It was not easy. And eventually I did accept medication. Now, the medication was really a plaster for me while I learnt a lot of things. And I could have done it without, but at the time I just kind of broke under it all, and I ended up begging for something because I was just so distraught. I was having a lot of suicidal thoughts, didn't know if I was going to get better, and eventually I just said, look, what can you give me? Because I was so anxious, I was just shaking, and even if I drank water, it was coming back up. I was just in a complete state of panic. They gave me diazepam and sertraline, and I ended up spending 3 years on both of those, which were difficult to deal with the side effects and the withdrawal, but I'm very glad that I did come off them in the end. Now, back to the plaster comment. They were a plaster really because they enabled me to perhaps be a bit more relaxed while I worked out that training that I needed to give myself, that I hadn't been given earlier. Now, it's funny, most people just don't get that, and the day they start their training is the day that things blow up and they just can't work out why they're anxious or having panic attacks. You know, there's such a need for us to get information out there. So I had no information, and it was different people that I met through this journey that I started to speak with who gave me my biggest lessons. So I'd like to talk about those lessons. I think my first biggest lesson was, I mentioned him in a previous video, it was a heroin addict who was sober at the time and told me, there's 2 times in your life you'll never have any control over. Do you know what they are? And I was clueless, and I said no. And he said, yesterday and tomorrow. But today you control. Today exists. Yesterday and tomorrow do not. And almost like that, something in my mind clicked. I stopped feeling so overwhelmed with the kind of depression of my past. And then I stopped feeling so nervous and anxious about what was coming in the future. And because it didn't exist, right? And it took someone to tell me that, to realize that. Essentially what he was talking about is the power of now. I hadn't read it at the time, but I do urge everybody to read The Power of Now. I think it's a very fundamental book on mindfulness that we should all read. It provides a lot of training. I wouldn't say it's the answer for everyone, but it's a big piece of the puzzle for a lot of people to get yourself in the right frame of mind. So almost straight away I started to just focus on now. How am I doing today? What am I doing right now? And by doing that, I stopped thinking about the bad and the future. So going forward from that, I managed to get my weight up a little bit more, and of course I met other people in the Priory who were amazing to me. It was truly the group therapy that helped me more than anything. It was listening to other people's stories and taking little parts from each person that fit into my own. And that was really what helped me more than all of the therapy that I had. It was actually the other patients, because we were all just being really open with each other. And I learned that that's what made me better, by being in an environment where everybody was just so open. So when I left hospital, unfortunately my insurance ran out and I had to leave. When I left hospital, I felt that I didn't have that circle anymore. I didn't have my group that I could be open with. So I started to test the waters with just people. And it was very difficult to begin with, because these people in society were not in hospital. And I kept thinking, who really wants to talk about this stuff? But I kept initiating conversations anyway. And now and then I would meet someone who was completely parallel to me, and we would just have the most incredible conversations and learn so much from each other. And I might never see that person again, but that very brief moment, I was able to gain another lesson from another person and give them a lesson, and we shared knowledge and leveled up. So what I continue to do is, well, I soon left England. After a couple of years of being in England, I realised that I just wasn't happy here. I wasn't getting enough conversation. I didn't feel like I was leveling up quick enough. So I stuffed a backpack and I just went to Amsterdam, basically. I ended up just speaking to anyone and everyone that I could. I'm talking like homeless people on the street, top businessmen, everyone in between. By doing that, I initiated conversations with so many different people on different paths, and I was able to rapidly gain information about who I was, what could make me a better person inside and in my mind and outwardly to other people. By initiating those conversations, I may have only connected with 1 in 20, but when I did meet that one person, it was so worth it. And that's what I've kept doing. That's what I encourage other people to do now, because it has been so valuable to me and my life. So that is the second thing I would encourage people to do, is just talk, just open up. Not everybody is going to understand you. You don't need them to. It's not their fault that they don't understand you either. So don't waste energy on trying to get people who don't understand to understand, because you can spend that energy on finding people who do understand and who will actually appreciate your story as well, because it helps them with their story. Now, the third thing I would say is acceptance. When I was anxious, I was constantly fighting my anxiety. Someone once told me to say the anxiety rather than my anxiety. And I think that's right. I think I made a mistake then. I should call it the anxiety. When you call it my anxiety, you like own it and you call it yours. What I mean though is that I was fighting it. So instead of just accepting it how it is and just kind of riding it out, I would start to feel anxious about being anxious. And then I would start to question all kinds of things like, why am I anxious? I don't want to be anxious. I hate being anxious. I hate my life. I hate this. And it would escalate, and suddenly I'd have a full-blown panic attack. Now, by fighting how you feel, you actually create more energy towards it. And you begin to feel more negative inside yourself as well. By learning to just accept that I felt anxious at that time, it took away all those questions in my head, all that negativity. Now, it wasn't an overnight thing. I had to gradually introduce it and tell myself step by step, this is okay. I've done this before. I survived. And the process I went through was basically to tell my body, okay, we're anxious. This is a completely normal human response that I need. You know, if we go back to when humans are just a part of a tribe, I would need my anxiety to tell me that there's a danger over there and I should not go over there because that lion's going to eat me, right? So we have to use the same concept now, and we have to say, right, well, there is a use to my anxiety. So let's accept it for what it is. Say, thank you for trying to protect me right now, but actually, I don't need protecting right now. Everything's exactly how it's meant to be, and I'm completely okay. So I'm just going to ride this out, and step by step, by doing that, I managed to cool down that noise that would escalate every time I started to feel anxious. It took a little while, but I managed to do it. So now when I get mild anxiety, and anxiety rarely approaches me now, I know exactly what to do because I've gone through that lesson myself each time by just accepting how I feel. And I actually encourage people to accept how you feel and not fight any emotion that you feel. The same with sadness and anger, happiness, of course, all of them. We are constantly, in my mind, on a spectrum of emotions. You're never one. You're always a bit of a few, and you just linger, okay, in different events. Basically, it's like the board when you're playing Twister, right? And the event comes along and it spins it around, and you end up on the one, basically with how you react. Let's imagine it as like a reaction board, and one day you might react this way, the next day you might react that way. It depends on other events and other things that you've picked up and learned for yourself, okay? But you should accept and go through each one as it's you, because each one, if you accept it, will actually teach you about yourself, your thoughts, and how you deal with that. And by dealing with that, you level up, and that takes you to the next level with your knowledge, which then you're able to share with others, much like I'm doing now, and makes you more confident that you're going to feel okay, makes you more acceptant towards yourself, and it helps you love yourself more because you actually get to know yourself so much better. And that's one of the biggest things that I think I gained. I really learned who I was once I started to accept all those things and go through them. And my questions change from why do I feel anxious to why do I feel anxious? Okay, I just changed the tone. Instead of being so like panicky about it, I tried to be like, okay, let's actually go through this and let's see. If I couldn't find it, well, okay, my body's just being a bit funny today. Perhaps I need to look at my diet. Perhaps I'm not getting enough chemicals in from different things. Let's look at other things. But make that conversation in your mind relaxed about the questions, because you need to tone it down to feel more balanced with it, in my opinion. So there's 3 things. I want to make this a really brief video, but it's already getting pretty long. So I'm going to wrap it up there. But that's my first video on anxiety. I feel that I have a lot to talk about with anxiety, so I'm going to get more videos out there in the future. But here's my first one. I hope that some things I've said will help 1 or 2 of you. I would love to hear your thoughts. If there's any questions, comments, anything you want to send in to me that you'd like me to answer, any of my opinions, or know more about my story. I will probably do a story in the future. I'd like to do a YouTube video basically telling my whole journey, and that will probably be over a few videos, but I would like to go through that process so people understand more about me, perhaps why I don't have any authority, but perhaps why I feel that I do have some things to talk about, because I've had my own journey that has taught me a lot of things, and I think people might appreciate the things I say a little bit more if they really know where I'm coming from. So yeah, thank you so much for listening. Please like this video if you liked it. Please subscribe if you'd like to hear more stuff of this kind of thing. And please share the video with anyone that you think might gain something from this. I truly appreciate it. I'll see you very soon. Thank you.